Hello guys and welcome to this year's Halloween Survival. Let's get right to it. So what do I see? Well, I see a king on the back rank and a rook of ours that can capture theirs with check. So that will be checkmate. On to the next one. For the next puzzle we have a back ranked king once again locked in by its own pieces and our rook that can slide in. They can interpose, but after that we can simply capture with our rook for another checkmate. So for the third puzzle, another back rank checkmate to the king with our queen this time instead of our rook. And after that, well, we do keep in line with the back rank checkmates because now our knight has the escape square for the king covered. The king obviously can't move anywhere there, meaning that our rook can slide in for another back rank checkmate. Easy going so far. Now, for the next one, what do we have? Well, the king is locked in by our bishop. Yes, they can interpose, but we are not going to use this bishop to check. Instead, we are going to use our other bishop to cover the king's square and all other escape squares for another checkmate. On to the fifth one. Sixth one, rather. At this time, we do notice that our knight over here is applying some pressure, is currently being contested by their knight, but it matters not because what does matter is that our knight over here is providing a safe square for our queen to slide in for another checkmate. The seventh puzzle, well, this time we have to look twice as the check comes from all the way across the board on this square by our bishop, meaning that our queen can easily slide in, delivering another checkmate. It seems like we are finally getting into the somewhat tricky solutions, as it seems like we are keeping king in check, meaning that our rook could slide in, but that is obviously is covered by their rook. So instead we are going to use our queen under cover of our own rook to deliver the checkmate anyway in two moves, because obviously we first push the king to the side, then we sacrifice the queen, they do capture, but we capture back with checkmate. Finally, what do we have on the ninth puzzle? Well, on the ninth puzzle, we have a discover check from our queen if we move our knight over here. And not only is it a discover check, it also, by moving the knight, eliminates the escape square for the king. So that will be checkmate. Now we have a check from our queen as such, but that easily is contested by their rook, or they can even interpose if they don't immediately want to throw their rook away, or they can simply move their king to the side. So we have to look at something else, and luckily something else we have the pawn that can capture. The king either moves to the side, which doesn't achieve anything, but what we also can do is to bring our queen forward, giving the check. They can't contest, so they are forced to the side, and then undercover offset pawn we can bring our rook in to deliver a checkmate in the corner. I think that's the actual solution. So yeah, after that, what else do we have? Well, we obviously have the square covered by our pawn. We do have a check we can give, but that's contested. We have our rook over here that can slide in with a check. The king can't move over there because that's covered by our knight, so the king is forced over there. After which we can actually bring the rook over under cover of the knight to deliver another check. And this will be covered by the bishop. This will be covered by the rook. That will be covered by the rook. This will be covered by the knight. So that will be checkmate. So let's start off with this check. The king moves back, and then we deliver the checkmate. There we go. Now, what do I notice here is that this bishop has this covered, meaning that if we move our queen over here, they have no pieces that can capture it. We do have the check, pushing the king in the corner, after which our queen can slide in for a checkmate. Now, what else do we have? We are already at the 700 plus mark, so we are getting somewhere slightly more difficult. What I do notice is that we have the bishop over here that can capture the knight. They can obviously capture back, but then our queen can slide in. They have to interpose, but by interposing, they do expose their rook to be captured, after which we can easily slide back, winning the rook. I think that's the solution. There we go. Now our queen is under attack, so we must either capture back and call the day, or maybe there is something better. And I think there actually is something better, because at the moment our queen is doing one important thing, which is pinning the pawn to the king. And as such, the pawn can't cover this square, which means that we can bring our knight in with a check. And more importantly, the escape square for the king is also covered by the knight, so this will be, oh, almost messed it up. This will be checkmate. What do I see here? Well, I don't really see anything immediately except for perhaps this check opportunity, or that the bishop is hanging. Now, we could go for the bishop and call it a day. Is that the best we can do? At the moment, it seems to be, but I am going to explore this check as well. Because if we do this, well, then the king is forced forward, as he can't escape under pressure of that queen. After the king is over there, what do we have? Do we have any follow-up checks? No, because our bishop can't check. The other, or knight can't check rather. Our other bishop does not have line of sight. So I think capturing the bishop is gonna be it. There we go. Another back rank checkmate, it seems like, because we move our queen in, they are forced to interpose as the king has no escape squares, which pins the rook to the king, meaning that then our bishop can slide in with the check that is now covered by their rook. There we go. They do move to the side, but obviously we use our queen to capture the rook at that point. I mean, we could move our rook to the side, so it is covered by the knight, but then the pawn can easily capture, and that would be that. What other options do we have? I don't see any hanging pieces. We could move our knight over here, giving the check, but that would invite the king to capture our rook. So that's not going to be it either. However, what I do also notice is, in line with this bishop, we can push our rook in, giving the check, forking the bishop, winning the bishop, and potentially even go for a checkmate somehow. Doesn't matter. We have a check over here. That's going to be easy enough. And once we give the check, the king is forced in the corner, after which we can actually move our knight over here, capturing their knight with a discovered check from our bishop, after which they probably... No, they have to move their king, meaning that we can then win the rook with that very same knight by sacrificing it. I still like this, but it's apparently not correct. If you know the right solution, drop it in the comments. Um, what do I notice here? Well, I notice that we have the check forcing the king over there, after which we can bring our queen in under cover of the rook to deliver a check. The king is forced back, but then at least our queen can safely move in the corner to deliver checkmate. There we go. For this puzzle, we are playing with whites. I do notice that we have our pawn that can capture with a fork on the queen and king. If they do use the queen to take, then we can use our queen to take back. With a checkmate, no, the king can still escape over here, so it might be more interesting to capture with the bishop. Let's see which one we... Oh, we don't even have to explore that far, but I have no doubt that it was a very winning position. Now with black, we can capture this pawn with a check, but if the king then moves over here, they are threatening to attack our knight. Is that a problem? I think it is, because once they capture the knight, they can capture the pawn and they can start advancing towards us. Not to mention that they also have this battery going on over here looking at our king. So what other options do we have? Well, aside from this check, I don't really see anything meaningful. Yes, we could give a check using our rook, but all that would do is either they would... No, the only option they have then is to capture our rook, after which we could use our other rook to give another check, but they have way too many options out of that. So I do think that giving the knight check is the right first move. After which we can actually, there we go, we can bring in this rook to give a check. The king is forced to capture our knight. And after that, what do we have? Well, I think we have something along the lines of not using the rook first and instead capturing with the pawn. Why with the pawn? Well, because that not only protects our knight, it also applies pressure on the other pawn and it prevents the king from escaping over there after we give the check. So let's see how they respond to this. That's not the right option. Once again, drop it in the comments if you do know the right answer. One life left. Let's see how far we can get. Now, I do like the idea of moving back with the concept of a check, but if they interpose, then we don't have enough follow-up. Why don't we have enough follow-up? Well, because the best we can do at that point is a discovered check, but it's obviously not a check, as our queen would have to be the one checking. As such, we have to first get our knight out of here, and I do think this is the wrong move, because if we do that, well, then under cover of their, well, or not even undercover, they can just go for checkmate. As such, we have to do something different. And do we have something different? Well, yes, we actually do, because once we capture this knight, if they want to somewhat stay in the game, they are basically forced to capture back. But by doing so, they put themselves in forking range for our knight. And I do believe that is the right option, especially because once they capture our queen and we go for the fork, that's also a double check, meaning that they have to move their king, winning us back the queen. There we go. That was juicy. What do we have here? Well, we have a queen that's looking all the way over here. We have a knight that can move in with a, not there, with a check, forcing the king over. And after that, I don't immediately see how we are going to win the game, but I also don't see how we would lose that game. So let's start off with this. Then the king moves over, and obviously then we just push our queen in the corner. There we go. Seems like we once again have a bully backrank mate, except we don't, because this square is not covered by our pieces. As such, we have to do something different, and the different thing we might have to do would actually be to move our queen over here with the check. If the king moves over, then we simply push in over here, forcing absolutely nothing. But if they do move over there, then we can also move our bishop over here as such, which does apply some pressure. So we go for the check. If a king moves over there, then we use the bishop with the checkmate. If they decide to move in the corner, then we sacrifice our queen. They do capture, but our battery is strong enough to capture the rook as well. So there we go. Yeah, that's what I said. At this point, what do we have? We can capture with pressure on the queen and then simply trade, which is a winning trade, so definitely not the worst, but I believe we have something better, especially considering that our knight is covering these squares, our bishop is looking at this square, meaning that we do have a check, which forces the king forward, after which our other knight can join in and deliver a checkmate. I do kind of like that, so there we go. Now, what do we have here? Well, we do have a check on the back rank. They have a plethora of ways to deal with that, but no matter which one they do, we at that point can actually bring in our queen, capturing the bishop, creating a battery with our rook and queen, on which we can't capitalize at the moment. Okay. However, what we also can do is reverse the order and start off by capturing the bishop. Why is this interesting? Well, because it somewhat forces them to capture back, or at least move their queen. Once they move their queen, we can go for the check. They are forced to capture. Once they capture, we can capture their queen. But that is a losing position, because at that point, this rook won't be here anymore, this rook won't be here anymore, their rook will be over there and will be able to slide in for a check. But we have an escape. I think that's why this square is empty. So with all of this positioning going on, I do believe that this is the right move. There we go. Clean. Wow. Not gonna lie, honestly, I surprised myself with that one. Here it seems rather simple. We go like this. The king can't move over there to the queen. The king can, however, move over here, but then we can encroach with the queen like so. And then we have that covered, not that, not that. This. Oh, do we capture with rook? Do we capture rook with rook or rook with queen? I believe it's rook first, purely on the basis that it means that we are consolidating our pieces, which makes it so we have a stronger presence on their side of the board. There we go. Now, the only safe check we can give would be to move over here, which what does it achieve? Not that much, honestly, as the king still has a ton of escape squares. But if instead we move our queen over here, then we have all of this covered, meaning that they are forced either there or there. And I believe that then we can start looking at a ladder mate or further encroaching on their territory. Too bad. There we go, guys. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe, and hopefully see you next video or next Halloween. Bye.